Besides using GUI tools like Wireshark to capture and analyze network traffic, which is great, we can also use command line utilities like tcpdump. tcpdump has long been built into the Unix and Linux operating systems. It's just a command line way to capture traffic, but it's got the same types of capabilities you might expect from any type of tool that does this, where you can specify filters. Maybe I only want to capture a certain type of traffic or from a certain host or to a host. And I can also save packet captures for later analysis. So let's see how this actually behaves. I'm running Ubuntu Linux, but that doesn't really matter because tcpdump, as far as I've ever seen, is a part of every Linux distribution. I'm sure there might be one or two where it's not included automatically, but I don't know about those ones. So what I'm going to do here in Linux is start by running man tcpdump. What am I doing? Man means manual page. In other words, please give me help on the command line parameters for tcpdump. So manual pages are a Unix and Linux thing. You can view the man pages, the help pages, for any command, which is great because we can't know everything. There's just no way to know everything. So man tcpdump, enter. Sure enough, I have a help screen that says, oh, -c does this, -C does that, and so on. And as I go through and read the description, it gives me a synopsis. And as I go further and further down, it'll start breaking down all of the parameters, command line parameters, and exactly what they do. Now, we're not here to read through this together because you can read as well as I can. But just to point out that the help is there. Q for quit. So let's work with it. tcpdump. The first thing I'm going to do is simply tell it I want to capture everything on a given network interface on my Linux host. Let's back up because I might not even know what my network interfaces are called, but I can find out very easily by typing ifconfig. So here, for instance, I've got an ETH0, Ethernet 0 interface. I want to capture network traffic on it. So if you have a multi-home computer with a bunch of network interfaces, sometimes you might only want to capture traffic on one of those interfaces. So that's why that's important. tcpdump then, -i, lowercase I for interface, and then I'm going to put in ETH0, and I get a message that says, well, you can't do that. Operation not permitted. I think we know why. We know why, because we didn't prefix that with sudo. I'm not logged in as root. If I type who am I, I'm a lowly end user called Azure user. And that's a privileged operation. No problem. I know I can run sudo tcpdump -i ETH0. Now it worked. Now what you're seeing flickering by on the screen are network packets. That's network traffic. Wow. Now, because I am SSH'd over the internet into this virtual machine running in the cloud, that's part of the reason we're seeing a lot of traffic, because I'm seeing it's all SSH traffic, which is how I am connected to get to the screen in the first place. But it is working. That's doing exactly what it should be doing. So I'm going to press Control-C to quit out of that, and I'm going to clear the screen, and let's do some more interesting examples about how to use tcpdump. First of all, tcpdump. There are times when you might want to look for traffic coming from a specific source. I'm only interested in seeing traffic that is being sent from this name or this IP address. So what I'm going to do is pop in an IP address. Now this IP address happens to be my IP, but the point is that we should be seeing some kind of network traffic. And yet again, of course, we don't have permission because we didn't put sudo in front of it. Well, let's see if we can do it now. And we can. And again, we're seeing SSH traffic because I am SSH'd in. But the point is that we can filter it for a specific source. Well, if you're thinking, if I can do it for a source, I can do it for a destination, you're right. So as an example, I want to see any network traffic, let's say going to cnn.com. Let's say that's what I'm interested in. Okay, so tcpdump -X, which means I don't want to just capture the packet headers, the addressing information. I want to capture the details in the payload of the transmission. You don't have to do that, but if you want to be able to see that information, you have to tell it that. And this is how. After that, DST for destination. So what do we want to watch for? Any traffic going to www.cnn.com. It could be any name, any IP address. It doesn't really matter. This is just an example. At the same time, let's say we want to write that to a file. It's a -w, and I want to call this file CNN underscore traffic. I don't need a file extension. Now what I want to do is I want to capture traffic going to CNN.com, but I want to type in a Linux command to generate that traffic. Well, the problem is if I press enter, if I put sudo in front of it, it'll run. And if I press enter, there we go, it's in the foreground. Well, how do I type in another command if I want to generate CNN traffic on the same host? Pretty easy, and a great little trick in Linux. So I'm going to use the up arrow key to bring up the right command prefixed with sudo. And at the end of the command, I'm going to add an ampersand symbol. So I'm shifting my number 7 key on the keyboard. Why am I doing that? That means run in the background. I want you to run, but in the background. I want my command prompt back so I can do other things. Okay, I'm going to press enter, and apparently it's running in the background. We can prove this by typing jobs, background jobs. Yep, it's running, and I can actually see my sudo tcpdump command. So what I want to do is just retrieve at least the home page for CNN.com at the command line. And I can do that in Linux with the wget command. Kind of handy. For example, how do I download a patch to apply an update on a Linux host? There are a bunch of ways using command line tools, but you can also download a file using wget. So I'm going to put wget www.cnn.com, and it went up to cnn.com, and it, okay, great, pulled down index.html, which is exactly what your browser actually does. Pulls down the HTML file, doesn't save it, but it renders it and displays it. Okay, so that should have been captured. So remember how I type jobs, right? Typing in jobs shows me background jobs. I have job number 1 that's running. So to bring that to the foreground so I can stop it, I'm going to press FG, or type in FG for foreground, space 1. So bring the background job numbered as 1 to the foreground. There it is. When I'm finished with it, I just press Control-C. So I stopped it from running. Now, let's see what happened. We didn't get any output because it was running in the background. Otherwise, normally we would see the output traffic on the screen. So I'm going to clear the screen, and let's read in that saved capture file. So if dash lowercase w does write, I'm sure you can guess what does read, lowercase r. So tcpdump dash lowercase r, what do we call that? CNN underscore traffic, I think. And again, permission denied, well, we know that. So we prefix it with sudo, and at this point, it's showing me the packet capture that was saved. This is not happening now. And what we're seeing is, for example, an IP address for HTTPS, and that IP address belongs to CNN.com. So we have a number of different ways then that we can use the tcpdump command to capture traffic and then start to analyze it, for example, through a saved capture file.